we go. Good morning, everybody.
Cut off the beginning.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Good morning, everybody. Melissa Nielsen.
And Eric Nielsen. We've got two different cameras.
We have two different cameras up again today. Probably going to do that for a little bit longer, just until we sort of decide where the best place for both videos to go is. So we wanted to talk today about, good morning, Miss Kelly. Thank you. Miss Kelly says hello. We wanted to talk today about media use with big kids. And I wanted Eric to be here because I think it's a parenting decision. It's not just mom's decision. I think that it's really important that both parents be on the same page with this and really sort of make a plan. I think with parenting, I think some of the worst parenting decisions I feel like I've made have been because we hadn't had a plan. I've been like, oh yes, just go ahead and do that. Oh, why did I just say that? Kind of thing. Yeah,
if you don't know what you're going to say in advance, you will be asked some crazy things.
Well, exactly, and I think that, and what I guess I want to define too, when we're talking about big kids, we're not talking about 6-year-olds. We're not talking about 8-year-olds. We're not even really talking about 9-year-olds. I'm talking about really 10 plus, but mostly 12 plus. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about we're talking about big kids that they're starting to somehow, like through the air, know what's going on, like with media.
Yeah.
Even if you have, been a parent that's been fairly sheltering for a good portion of their life, because of your interests, they're going to have interests.
Yeah.
I think that that's really important. We talk about media a lot with regards to Waldorf, but you still have interests that come through when we're talking about and it's just, it is what it is. And go ahead, what you look like you're ready to say something.
But I mean, sometimes they see things you're interested in and they're curious, but sometimes it's just like something that's in the ether.
It feels like that.
For some reason, they latch onto. Because I remember we got a big laugh because the co-op kids are about Sam's age. They were all talking about, hey, we got to figure out how to get to see Suicide.
Oh, Suicide Squad.
I was
not.
I mean, none of these kids saw it or got to see it.
No, but it was definitely.
But it was like somehow they were like.
They had it in their heads.
There was like this thing that was being,
happen.
Yeah, there was this thing that was being discussed in hushed tones.
It was really kind of funny. It was really kind of funny because a couple of us parents had to go, okay, we're gonna have a talk with y'all about Suicide Squad, like a co-op, and these kids are about 10 and up.
Yeah.
Some of them are 13. So, and we're talking about a group of like maybe 6 kids, and so it's just kind of funny how it kind of just it's in the mix. It's almost in the air.
And it's impossible to not know, regardless of how much media you get. It's impossible probably to not have heard of Batman and the Joker.
Well, right, absolutely, and so I think that really when I was looking at this topic, I was thinking about a couple of different things. I was thinking about the role that temperament has with regards to media use. And I was thinking about the role that your own interests have with regards to your child's media use, and then sort of how you navigate that. And so I welcome questions where we're working through this because definitely, like I said, we're on 2 different cameras. That's why you see me going here and then going there. But definitely ask questions because we've got people on both sides here on both cameras, and we really just want to help you navigate this and talk to you about how we've navigated it, because sometimes there have been a time or two that I don't think we navigated it very well.
No.
But then I think on the whole we navigate it pretty good.
Yeah.
Most of the time. So I guess let's start with the computer. I think that the rule of having a computer in a child's room is a no-no.
Well, yeah. There's too many things out there that, I could go on a list of like scary things that I've heard about. But
right.
Not to go into detail.
No, it's not a good idea. So then we talk about smartphones because they're basically a little computer.
Yeah.
And we have a rule here. For one, I will say that our older 3 children, had a phone, not a smartphone early on, but had a phone because they were traveling back and forth between our house and my ex's house, and the phone use was not available to them over there, and so that they had a cell phone. But it had a purpose. That was the purpose. The purpose was that. And so when parents ask me, oh, how old should my child be before I get them a phone? I ask them, well, what's your child doing? What is the need?
Yeah.
So here we have Super Sam, who's almost 12, and he's like, ooh, do I get a phone? I'm like, no. I don't know what you're thinking, but that's not happening.
That's the last thing.
Well, and again, because, he's homeschooled, his activities are within blocks of our home that involve siblings, so it's not like he's ever there by himself and a friend. So it's not like he's ever there by himself with in any situation where he would have the emergency need to have a phone. So evaluate what's going on in your children's lives. I think that's really the most important piece. And once you've evaluated what's going on, then you can make a better decision about whether or not they need a phone. But I think that really when we end up doing a phone, it will probably be more like an extra phone that's a floater phone. It was not going to be like, here you go, here's your own phone. Kind of.
Yeah.
And like I said, we did that for bigger kids for different reasons. But when it comes to having a computer on this little phone, you have to have parameters.
Yeah.
We have parameters. We've always had the rule of if you password protect the screen, we have to know what the password is.
Yeah.
And the store app has always been password protected, just because I think that's smart. And then I think it's a trust situation too. As they build trust, then you can give trust.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about how we've handled that
and there's
in
times
general?
that Sam's wanted to look something up.
Right,
and
absolutely.
I
and
totally
again, I want to say,
supervise
as of the filming of this, Sam is almost 12.
Yeah.
So Kelly says in the comments, we have a floater phone that is an IKEA with no internet. Yes, I think that's a perfect. I think that's a perfect where you've got several kids that are under the age of needing a phone, and it's nice to be able to say, here you go, this is, but it's not theirs. It doesn't belong just to them, and I think that's really important. Jessica Frank says, love this. Should be based on need instead of assumption that that every kid needs a phone. Exactly. I think that we live in this society now where everybody is sort of attached to their phones, us adults included, and so I think that it's kind of like kids think it's a foregone conclusion. But one of the things that we've discussed, so we have a 17-year-old that still lives at home, and she, because it costs money. I mean, that's a big part of it. I think that we have a deal with her. We sort of laugh that we get subsidized childcare because we pay for her car insurance and her phone.
Yeah.
So she gives us cheaper rate on childcare, and that's how we've navigated it with her as an older teen. We did similar trading for when we had our older son at home. Now he's an adult, and one of the things that we've agreed to do is pay for his phone for the next year because he's getting his feet wet as far as becoming an adult. But as far as navigating what goes on that smartphone, I do think you have to be diligent. I think we've had to be diligent. We've had situations where we needed to be more diligent than others.
And I think you need to have a conversation about what to do in certain situations. My brother, whose kids go to a public school in Idaho, he complained that his daughter was on the school bus one day and a kid had a phone and was passing around and was showing other kids pornography on it.
Yeah, so you definitely have to have those conversations. And it's really, it's too bad that we have to have those conversations. But yeah, I think that sort of thing is happening younger and younger. I think we're seeing that in, 10-year-olds and in 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing a lot of scary stuff that I see on the news all the time that I try not to watch. But
there's
goodness.
people out there that their goal is to convince you to put a Tide Pod in your mouth, or there's a goal to
so you have to really watch. You really have to watch.
I mean, there's not to be too depressing, but there's people that have been convincing kids to kill themselves on the internet.
Absolutely. So I think that you have to be really careful about YouTube usage. And I would say that when you've got a minor, or at least a child that is under 16, I would say that whatever YouTube account they use should probably be your YouTube account. That when you log it in, you can actually see that. Let's see. Yeah, Kelly says that this is something that happened in her area with third graders at recess during school. So I think that with regards to the porn, I guess I'm guessing on smartphones. So I think we have to be very vigilant with regards to what it is that's on that phone. Yeah. And the reason why I say you use your YouTube account is because then you know what they're watching. Yeah. You can always go back and you can always look at the history. And we do the same thing with Netflix and with any other thing that's on that phone. We use our accounts because then we can see. And our rule with Netflix has always been, you best be honest with us because we can go and look at the Netflix history. Yeah. Regardless of where you're watching it. If you're watching it on a TV and we weren't here, or watching it on a phone, we can absolutely look at the history. And so when they whine and complain, I go, gosh, when you have the money to pay $12.99 a month to Netflix, and you're old enough to make a contract as an adult, then we'll talk about it.
I mean, also, too, I think sometimes we'll make assumptions that things are okay when they're not. Like, on Netflix, there's, like, the kids...
Yes, and that's not always,
and there's like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on there.
And that's not, while that's a show we enjoy, it's definitely not a kid's show.
There's things that like a 10-year-old need not be worried about watching.
Absolutely.
That show.
I think that's, there's assumptions that you want to be able to make as a parent, and you can't. You can't make that assumption at all.
And like Media Beyond Videos, I've known parents that they've bought kids... like manga and thinking, oh, it's a comic book, it's okay.
It's not. It's not okay.
And there's some manga that's age appropriate, but there's some that's going to really confuse them about issues of
sexuality.
Yes, and so assuming that, oh, that's a cartoon or that's a comic book, it's okay. Right. I've known a lot of parents that have gotten some trouble because they just assumed, and then it turned out that it went on about some things that they weren't ready to discuss or the kids weren't ready for.
Well, and I think that with regards to things like manga, because it's in the library, you have to educate your library, I think, for one, because it'll be in the kids section otherwise, because they do make that assumption that it's a comic book. But you need to, if you have a child that's interested in manga, you need to find somebody who knows manga and ask questions. Yeah. We've been very lucky. Our oldest child, he's not a child. He's just a grown-up. It just feels weird to say that. Yeah. He has enjoyed manga through his teenage years, and I can go to him and I can say, Harry, what do you think about this one? And he'll be like, no, that one should be 14 and up or 16 and up, or you should stay away from that one altogether. And I think that's been super helpful for us. So find somebody that you trust. Because even though we like a lot of out of the mainstream things, manga is not one of them. I think you have this
that's alternative a whole world that I'm not super familiar with.
Right, that you have this alternative media world that is giant, and that's just not something that we're super interested in. And so it's very helpful to have somebody that that can help you navigate that. So ask around, ask friends, ask family members, ask on the internet. You are always welcome. If you're part of our Ask Melissa group or one of our membership groups, to ask me, and I'll ask Harry. He's always really good about helping me navigate those situations.
I was in a library once, and they had.
I was trying to see if there's any more comments.
I was in a library once in the teen section, and they had the Walking Dead comic books.
Yeah,
and those comic books are very R-rated,
and they're really graphic. They're really, really graphic.
So you I think sometimes you do have librarians that aren't.
Yeah, you have to really make sure that you educate the librarians
about their sections as they.
Right. And I think there's a lot of assumptions that are made. And I think that what we're looking at is in the last. In the alternative media world, adults have always read those things. Yeah. But in the last probably 15 years, we're seeing that in the mainstream, it's okay for adults to like this kind of stuff. Where before it was kind of like, only the nerds liked that, but now
Yeah.
you're saying more and more people liking it. So my hope is that because of that, you're going to see librarians that are trained more.
Yeah.
You're going to see people that have a better knowledge of things like that. And so I think that when we're talking about these young teens into older teenage years, it's just about paying attention.
Yeah.
And you have to pay attention to that obviously when they're really little too. But I would say that they're really starting, after they've hit that 9-year change, they're really starting to beg for their own autonomy in a lot of ways, and you have to really be able to navigate where you're okay giving that. And so I get the question I get a lot from Waldorf parents that are navigating the teen years for the first time is how much TV is too much TV, or how much TV is enough TV. And so one thing that I would say first is we should talk about temperament, because I would say that when I think about all of our kids, I would say the more sanguine ones generally don't have the time for TV, or they do. Like, I think about Jacob, he'll watch, but he's like, and he'd rather go do something else.
Yeah, he might watch for a half hour.
I never had to worry about.
He's outside running around.
I never had to worry about him. I never had to worry about him being somebody who was going to be a couch potato, because that was just not going to be him. So if you are active as a family, then you're going to have the TV on less. In fact, that was our rule when they were all younger. When Harry was the oldest, obviously he's always been the oldest at home, but when he was like 12, my rule was, well, we're just going to stay so active that we're not going to have time for the TV. And we did that for the most part. Our rule was like no TV until after 4, and then it was if all of our chores were done, and if we had this criteria. And we treated screens as screens. If it was a computer screen or a TV screen, it was still counted as media. And so if you chose to spend your screen time on the computer, that didn't mean that you got to then turn around and watch a TV show. So we were very very careful about that. But as we had more teens that were getting older, they were wanting to watch shows. And I'm not talking about horrible shows. I'm talking about, watching some of the Marvel movies, or watching Doctor Who. That was one that the little ones can't really watch. And some Doctor Who is benign, and little ones can watch it. But I just remember Harry being afraid of the Daleks. He was probably afraid of the Daleks until he was 12.
Yeah.
and now he would be really embarrassed to know. Sorry, son, I hope you're not watching.
But with on the video games,
pay attention to the rating.
Pay attention to the ratings, but also pay attention when you tell them to get off of it.
Oh,
are
yes.
they irritable? Are they grouchy?
Right.
Are they angry?
Absolutely.
Or is it just they turn it off and go dee-dee-dee, so, on to the next thing.
And that's going to be a temperament thing, too. One thing that's super helpful here that I try to do is, especially if it's a game, if it's a game that and this requires moms to really pay attention, because I know that, I had to tell you, I'm not the video game parent. I'm just not. He is. And so I'll ask him all the questions I need to. Just because, for the most part, it was not part of my upbringing. I was an only child. We did not have that. That was just not. It was not part of my upbringing.
Yeah.
So while I had things here and there, I enjoyed playing Q*bert at an arcade, or I enjoyed playing Centipede or something like that. It was not in my home, and so I'm not the parent to ask about that. But I have to educate myself on what it is that they're playing. So I will ask, are you playing a game that has save points? So save points are these points in the game, right, where they can save their progress so that when they come back to it, they can pick up where they left off. And so what I usually try to do, if I know that Sam is playing a game that has save points, I will say, you have 5 minutes to get to the next save point, and then you got to be done.
Yeah.
Because he's phlegmatic, and he could play all day.
But we've been careful that kids aren't playing things that there's depictions of.
Oh, yes. That's absolutely.
Killing people.
You have to be really careful about that. And I think that, I've always sort of made the distinction about whether or not you're defending a keep and it's an alien that you're defending, or if you're actually shooting people. And that's a real problem for me. because I think that that's really where so many kids get desensitized, is in this idea that they're killing people.
Well, I mean, when I was growing up, it was Atari and the original Nintendo.
Right.
And, you know, nowadays it looks extremely realistic.
It does. It looks extremely realistic. I mean, Harry told us that new Zelda game that he played on the Switch looked like crazy realistic. He felt like he was there.
And you have to be careful about that.
You do.
With kid, and Harry's an adult.
Harry's an adult, but he's also got autism spectrum disorder, and so I think you have to be really careful about knowing. You have to do your diligence. You have to really pay attention, and I don't think there's a time. I mean, now he's an adult and he's out of our house, but when he was in our house, I still was like, okay, let's talk about this. Okay, so I'm going to grab some comments here. April says, any advice about rules for texting with friends? For example, we have a floater phone for kids, but just recently started letting our 15-year-old text a few friends just from 4 to 8 p.m. on weekends and 9 to 8 a.m. Oh, wait, sorry. On weekdays and 9 to 8 p.m. on weekends. The problem is she wants to text the entire time. This was not my intention, and she knows this. I set these times so that we wouldn't have to worry about middle of the night texting. Give them an inch and they'll take a mile. I don't want to place this constantly. I think that since you have a 15-year-old, this is definitely... Do you know this 15-year-old's temperament? I want to go back about temperament. I think that different temperaments, again, are going to use technology differently.
Yeah.
I think that your sanguine ones are going to want to text more, probably, because texting is fast, it's instant, and it keeps them going. It feeds that sanguineness almost like to a fault.
Sometimes you end up having to be the cop, and it's not fun.
No, it's not. But we've done it. We've definitely done it.
Family meetings or dinners where a teenager that has a phone has got it under the table, and they're like looking down and trying to pretend that they're not, and you're like, hey, you need to put that up.
So we've had the rule of you are welcome to be here at the table without your phone.
Yeah.
Or you're welcome to put it on the counter, in your pocket or on the counter.
Yeah.
Because it's disrespectful and frustrating when when they're you're trying to have a family dinner, and as they get older and you have more of them, your family dinners of cohesiveness are going to be less and less, and you're going to see that, and it's going to tug at your heartstrings. You're going to be like, why can't you just sit here with us and enjoy us? Oh, they can't because they're teenagers. That's just not what they are.
Well, then with teenagers, social media, can be a hard one because we've had kids,
right?
Teenage kids, not younger kids. They'll get into some fight with somebody on Facebook, and then they're grouchy all day, and we're like, what is
wrong? And there's nothing that happened at home
that they'd never met. And they never will, and someone's being nasty, and they've gotten into some argument that may involve like their understanding of politics or social issues.
Social issues, yeah. Social issues is the hard one.
And then they're angry all day.
So. Right, absolutely. And you have to realize that if you're homeschooling, it's going to be a different set of issues than if they're in a school. But what I have been acutely aware of is, as they're teenagers, they're in these different developmental stages, and they are trying to flex those muscles, and trying to navigate that. And if there was no phone setting, they would be doing that face to face, and that face to face is always different than trying to navigate that understanding of politics and understanding of social issues on a phone. I think that Facebook is a horrible place to try to understand those things. But it is the place of choice for most Americans, and I would venture to say most people of developed countries across the world. I think that is where most people get their news. And I think that even though you can make a choice as an adult to not get your news from there, that is definitely where a lot of people get their news. And so if you have children that are trying to flex those muscles, be aware and we had to get good at just saying, did something happen online? And just ask, is that why you're grouchy? What's going on? And really be empathetic I think, and also use it as teaching moments that these are people you are never going to see. Could you just walk away? Could you just, I can remember Harry being really upset about some things in some groups, and one of the things is that I remember very clearly was him getting into discussions of faith, and then feeling like he was bashed because of his faith. And so it became a teaching moment of, well, don't get into those discussions. It's not something you should be talking about unless you know you're among others that believe the same way. Then don't get into those discussions. It's not a fun thing to have to defend your faith when you're an adult. It's definitely not a fun thing to defend your faith when you're 16.
Yeah.
And you're still trying to figure that faith place out, and you're still trying to build that testimony. So, really be very careful about sort of what they have access to. Our rule has always been too with things like Facebook is that if they have a public profile, that we have to be on it. We cannot be excluded. We have to know passwords. It's always been our rule. If a kid changes the password and doesn't tell us, then the phone becomes ours.
Yes.
At least for a determined amount of time. That we've always felt like, for one, we're the ones paying for it.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
It's ours. It belongs to me. It does not belong to you. It is loaned to you. And so, we've always been very open about that. It belongs to us, and so we have the control over it. But with regards to what April's asking with texting, I would just say that one of the things, because here's the thing, I'm gonna out myself. I would much rather text somebody than talk on the phone, and some of that is because as a coach, when I'm talking on the phone, I talk on the phone a lot, and so I would rather text somebody. So I will say to a kid, why don't you just call them on the phone? But that's not, when we were kids, we sat on the phone for hours in the night. I can remember my mom being like, you got 10 more minutes, wrap it up. And so I do think that what we're seeing is texting is a replacement for what we did as kids.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I would say with that is I would really just make the family rule that, okay, if you're going to be texting, I mean, one thing that would curb that texting is that if it was a T9 phone, nobody wants to text like that.
No.
But if it's not, obviously a full keyboard, I would just say that you put parameters on it, and you have parameters on it being on the weekends. Maybe cut that weekend time down if it's frustrating you. Talk to your child, especially at 15. I think that it's definitely a time when you can say, okay, we're gonna have to put up some rules, and I always tell my kids, don't make me have to make rules about something. Yeah. If I have to make rules about it, I promise it will benefit me more than it benefits you. I promise. But if you can keep it under the radar and police yourself and, flex that will of yours, then I will be so proud of you, and I will not make a rule about it. Because that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get them to a place where they're flexing those muscles themselves and making, policing themselves. And that's a hard place for them to navigate. And I think that they're trying to figure it out, that 15, 16 place. Ellie is 17, and the only thing that I see her doing these days, like, she likes Snapchat, but you have to be careful with things about, like, Snapchat, because Snapchat's one of those, it's gone in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so
you have like that. I don't.
Yeah, I don't remember what the rules are totally. So she says to me the other day, I don't know if you heard her, I think it's really cute how you guys can't navigate your phones. I was like, I can navigate my phone, thank you very much. I just don't do all the same crap you do.
She does Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Yes. And yes.
All that stuff.
And so you have to be really, again, go back to being careful about what it is that they're doing. And be in a place where you are constantly able to police it and constantly able to, you have open communication. So it's always been for us, like I said before, that I'm not going to be upset as long as if I want to see something on your phone, that you are willing to hand it to me at any time. I do not consider it an invasion of your privacy when you are a minor living in my house and I'm paying for your phone.
Yeah.
If you would like to keep a diary, do what normal people do. Put it in a book, keep a lock on it. Do not keep it on your phone because it is my property and I am allowed to see it. Now, for kids that purchase
we had
them,
it set up that I think we still do, that all the pictures
Yes.
were uploaded to a
To
cloud
Dropbox.
account.
Yes.
And everybody's pictures were
Every
being
picture that
sent
they
to the
took.
same.
every picture that they took went to, I'll grab that question in just a second, went to a cloud. So if you don't know what we're talking about, I'm not talking about, so with iPhones, I know they have their own specific cloud. Don't rely on that unless you have access to that cloud. So
Dropbox
we had
or
Dropbox
something.
and we also have OneDrive. So everybody's pictures go to one place.
Yeah.
One place. And guess what? Mom can see that place. I can remember, it seems like I had to say to her once, I think she was like 13, how come you taking so many screenshots of Chris Hemsworth? She was like, how do you know I'm taking screenshots of Chris Hemsworth? Well, because it uploads to Dropbox. So when they know that then they're more mindful. And it does not, you can't delete it. Once you take that picture, so it really keeps, this is what I would say to them when we started this system. I said, we have now employed Dropbox. I best not see any pictures of your genitalia on Dropbox. Ever. And they're like, okay, why would we do that?
I'm
just saying, I don't ever want to see that. So it helps to be there ahead of it so that you don't have it. So Tara asks, do you feel there's a link between ADHD and screen time? I think that it's a trigger for it. I do think that it can take a child that is already, going in that direction.
Definitely aggravate it for sure.
And aggravate it. I definitely for sure think that. I for sure think that that it can be a problem. And so you have to, again, really pay attention to the child and really pay attention to sort of what things that they are going towards. I think that one of the things that I see with our oldest that's kind of got some ADD stuff going on there mixed in with the autism is we sort of laugh. But this thing that we're about to describe actually got him the job that he has right now, and so it's kind of a head scratcher. He can be doing something on his phone, like one of those stupid games that plays itself, listening to a podcast, and playing a video game at the same time on the computer.
He's got like 3 things going on at once.
So that, though, is very comfortable for him. It almost feeds him in a good way, where only one of those things at a time might make him more aggravated.
Yeah.
So you have to really be able to look at your child and what feeds your child. I think that there are different things that feed different children. So where that comes into his job, he right now he's working as a security guard for the MTS, which is a train system here in San Diego, and he works in dispatch. And when he came home the first day, because they sort of let them choose where they want to be in security, and he really asked to be in dispatch. And I said, "Why did you want to be there?" He said, "Because it's awesome. I have to look at 3 screens at the same time." Like, he was really enjoying the fact that he would be able to put that skill to use.
Yeah.
And he talks about how many people leave dispatch because it's so overwhelming. But it's not overwhelming to him because his brain thinks that way.
Yeah.
I watched the movie Temple Grandin last week, and I was super, so many aha moments for me as a parent with a child of autism. And I see Eric's phone is about to die, so if we lose that one, we're just going to be on this one.
Yeah, I had it at 40% when we started. I thought that'd be plenty of time.
Oh, well, we'll wrap it up here.
Sorry.
But anyways, with regards to Temple Grandin, if you've got a kid on the spectrum, or a kid with autism, I think it's an excellent watch for you. I'm not so sure I would have a child watch it. Definitely recommended it to Harry as an adult so that I could see whether or not he had some of the same aha moments that I did. It was a very good watch in that it showed sort of how her brain was working. And I saw a TED Talk done by her the other day too, so you could look that up. I think it's very interesting. the things that she has to say about the brain and how she sees things differently. It really helped me to validate some of the things, I think, and it's really hard to be in that validation place, I think, sometimes when you have a child in the autism spectrum. And if your child is younger, it's really hard to think about them growing up and moving on. And so I think that this movie it's a good movie to watch for that, like that you can see, yes, this child is going somewhere. And even though, like with regards to Harry, and I'm kind of veering off here to a special needs thing for a minute, but even though he's not doing what we thought he would do when he came home from his mission, he's doing something amazing that suits him. And I think that that's really what we have to pay attention to. But with regards to his media use, he's always been the kid that I'm like, stop it. But there were things that fed him and made him jittery, and then there were things that fed him and chilled him out. And so that's a very interesting, again, temperament too, because he's very phlegmatic. He could do that all day. Cholerics probably aren't going to have a whole lot of time for video games because they got other stuff to do.
Yeah.
On their mind. It's the way our head works that I can't control it. So if I can't control it, then I probably won't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that probably the same, I think that you could have the same thought about maybe some melancholies, maybe would play some games, but not get stuck. But maybe. I think it depends on the situation. So I think with regards to how you're navigating media, just be mindful. Now, I will say, like Sam is almost 12, and he has a love of the classics, thanks to who his dad is. Yeah. And the classics being old stuff. Like he loves old stuff. Retro gaming would be his. Now, that doesn't mean he has to do it all hours of the day. We have parameters set on it. The other thing that I want to say is if you're looking for ways to connect with older children and they really are into things like that, you really want to be mindful of listening to what it is that they like and finding ways to connect with that, even if it has nothing to do with something you'd like. Because again, we're looking at connecting with them in a way that suits them, and we cannot always expect that, especially if in the Waldorf crowd, that they're going to love fairies and gnomes forever. Now, I will say that my kids all love fairies and gnomes, but they like video games too, the older kids. Yeah. Or motocross. Jacob's got this motorcycle that scares the crap out of me right now. So I think that you have to be willing to meet them halfway, because especially if you've raised these children that you want them to think for themselves, they're going to have interests that are different from yours. Yeah. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do with
you're welcome.
Tara, you're welcome. Tara says, thank you for your response. You are both wonderful. Thank you, Tara. One of the things I've been trying to do with Samuel lately, to just keep us connected, is 2 nights a week, Friday and Saturday only, because otherwise I would be exhausted all the time. Friday and Saturday only, we watch a movie together. And it's just he and I, and we wait until Soraya goes to bed. So it's usually we start about 8:30, depending on how ready she is to go to sleep. And he and I watch. Now, we just finished the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Holy cow, that took us a while, because we watched the extended versions. But it was great. He's read The Hobbit. He has not read The Lord of the Rings yet, which is usually my rule, that you have to read it first. But he'd wanted to, and he'd read The Hobbit, and we'd watched the Hobbit movie, and so he really wanted to also experience The Lord of the Rings, so we did that. I was not uncomfortable with the level of violence and with his age. Yeah. I would say that, like I said, he's almost 12. A younger child, I would not have been comfortable, because there are some pretty hairy scenes. Yeah. Most of the scenes are of humanoid, whether they be orcs or humans or elves, dying. And so, I wanted to be very careful with that. So now we have embarked on the Star Wars. It's not a trilogy, it's a saga. So we started with episode 1 this last week. And so in 3 months, I think we'll be done. Maybe. Yeah. But I'm bringing this up because I want you to find ways to connect with them. Find ways to connect with them on their level with what they want. So I know he loves movies, and I love to sit and watch with him, but he let me pick. And I was like, well, I really want to get clear on some holes I think I have with Star Wars. He's like, let's watch it all. I said, okay, well, it's going to take us a while because we got the Clone Wars and we've got a whole lot of cartoons and things to watch in between there. So I guess I'm bringing this up in the thing that if you are trying to connect with an older child, and even though you would rather take a walk on the beach or go on a hike, that might not be what will connect you to them. So you have to be aware of what will connect you to them and then go from there. So I think we have people that are waking up. So I think we're going to wrap things up. And Eric's phone's got 7%. Mine doesn't because I charge it all day long.
I thought I did, and then I didn't.
Anyway,
yeah.
I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And join us next week. I forgot what I said. Oh, next week is more Waldorf focused. And I'm going to be talking about when you feel like your kids are behind or the stress about kids being behind. So join us if that's a concern for you. This is Soraya. Say good morning.
Good morning.
Hope you all have a wonderful week. We'll see y'all later. Remember that you can catch us on YouTube for the replay. And also, if you are so inclined, you can support us on Patreon.
Yep.
Patreon.com. So, and Kelly can pop that in the comments. So,
Okay.
thank you all. Have a wonderful week.
Have a good one.
Bye now.
Bye.